Well, on the horsey theme, I've got an old standard bred that he's been with us for a good 30 years now, and he's been a great old boy. He was originally going to the knackers, I think, for his dog food, and we saved him, and he let my girls learn to ride on him, and I put him in a cart, and we drove him for a while on that. But now he's retired, and he sits on 100 acres there, and just enjoys being hard fed or um, whatever else we give him. So I wrote this little poem about him. He started life on the racing track. In harness he would try, but he didn't make the grade right there, and he met the dogger's eye. And I caught him before he met that fate. His chestnut coat had gleamed. I floated him to my high bush block, where he joined my mountain team. He wasn't the most comfortable nag, always sticking to a trot, but when I edged him on a bit, he'd gallop with the lot. A standard bred, he held his own when harnessed in a cart. I taught my girls how to drive a horse. They learnt a long lost art. Now he grazes in the paddocks, retired from his toil, except for his deposits that fortify our soil. This good old sorrel standard bred, Andy is his handle. He'll spend his days in rest and play. Through stringy bark he'll amble. And most of my poetry sort of comes from wandering around the countryside and wandering along a river, and just getting ideas that way. This was one I wrote down in the Murray River. We were down at Swan Hill, I think it was. We called it the Old Red Gum. The old red gum just sat there on the ground for many years. It had seen the rain, it had seen the drought, it had felt the farmer's tears. Once a proud and steadfast eucalypt with a canopy of green, but with storms about and horrid wind, it had cast an awful lean. And its footing, once so wide and strong, were feeble by the weather. The massive tree came crashing down, unleashed from its strong tether. But the gum in its misfortune now finds another path for a woodcutter with a motor saw to place it on his hearth. And he carves it up with a chisel chain with 3/8 pitch, I think, and he loads it on his tabletop. Then an ale he'll seek to drink, and the warmth from the old red champion will heat and cook for his kin, for the old red gum lives on from the home fires within. Oh, beautiful spot. Yeah, yeah. Ah, reminds you of home. Um, my family originally came from Stratford in Gippsland, and they were original pioneers there. My great grandfather was born in around about the 1860s, and I just thought he would have been around when Ned Kelly was being caught and gone down, and probably picked up the newspaper and thought, yeah, they've got him now, sort of thing. And so I thought, from his perspective, well, what would he have seen? And I wrote this poem called Another Morning in 1880. A winter's day, Nutton Hill, old Gippsland month of June. The Gippsland Times retrieved from town. It struck a sombre tune. They'd caught Ned Kelly 2 days before and eliminated his gang. The news, it rang a final note that he would surely hang. I'll drink my tea and think that I will harness up the grey and take the spring cart into town. I need to get some hay. And while I'm there, I'll pick up some flour and some tea. I need to get some horseshoes, a better gait you'll see. I ponder now on the article I read in the Gippsland Times, so later I'll head down to the Shakespeare pub and reflect upon the crimes. With some mates I'll surely argue on the Irish family's grief, to whether they were heroes or just a common thief. So, that's the sort of thing, a lot of pros and cons to the ideas of Kelly, and people that loved him and people that didn't in those days. But I just thought from that side it would have been echoing across Victoria. This is a bit of a fun one I did. I thought bouncing off New South Wales towns called starting with B. So I call it the Bs of New South Wales, not to do with some of the bees that you meet going through New South Wales, but the names of the town. From Bingara to Barabara and out to Barnbar too, we shot on out to Boggabri, Kamilaroi place of many creeks, through Barradine via the Pilliga. It could have taken weeks. Barwarrina and Burke with many cockatoos, a real good horse and a saddlebag, and a pot of mutton stew. We made it out to Broken Hill, not seeing hills or dales. We travelled over the wide vast land through the bees of New South Wales. It was better camel country, but our horses held it tight. We travelled even further. We had Balranald in our sight. Then we went to Berrigan, a gem on the Riverine, through the mountains down to Bombala and to Bega for some cheese. We've travelled most of New South Wales, travelling through the bees. We started out for Bateman's Bay, then on to Braidwood High. On the beautiful southern tableland, you can almost touch the sky. Then headed off to Brewer. We had Bathurst in our sights. We better get a move on. It'll take us several nights. And we thought we'd camp a while in a yard with old slip rails. We've done a lot of roving through the bees of New South Wales. We better get those horses home near Bendermere we hail. Yes, we've seen a lot of country towns from the bees of New South Wales. Yeah, I could have kept going.
I couldn't find any bees in Queensland 2 days ago. Well, hardly any. There's Darling.
They'll be.
There's something else. Yeah. There's very few. Anyhow, I settled on Darling Downs.
Ah. Oh, right. Yeah. Lovely. Why do they say Bynalong? It's a B-I. That's what I always find when you're talking to locals. Yeah, I saw you on. You did something. Yeah. He was the American, wasn't he? Yeah, Canadian. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting stuff. Yeah, we love to go through the towns that had that sort of history too. You know, your Guyra and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So another one down your way on Big River, a place where a soul can rest or meander with its flow. It's where the paddle steamers roamed until the water's low, where wool and timber ruled in a time with much less stress, when a man he wore a suit and a woman wore a dress. On a river old as time, you can lose your troubles wide as the banks ascend to the river gums that grow on either side. And the wildlife did abound along the river course, the swaggy, the bullocky, and the stockman on his horse. Its levels now are low, in all its hold, its grandeur, the mighty Murray River will always have its stature. An amazing river. And yeah, so that's just a few. I'll just bring you back home here where sort of sitting on my veranda. It sort of goes along the sort of the story that A.B. Patterson had about beyond the Moonbi range sort of thing. This one, it's beyond the range, but oh look, we sit right on the range and just over the other side to Bendermere sort of thing. So through eucalypts and granite tore beyond the range we seek, the rugged travellers quest to find a path not for the meek. Along the spurs of the Great Divide they shouldered heavy loads to find their place beyond the range, so far from their abodes. Above majestic wedge-tails fly and parrots they abound, perusing down on ant-like men who scurry across the ground. For the grass is always greener when you reach the other side, to see the land beyond the range, so many men have died. The little girl, yeah, little bush maiden. Yeah. he took in so much of Australia and sort of described it, saying, well, and areas that he loved, and he sort of wrote a bit more about. Yeah, yeah. I love a cup of tea, and I love a cup of billy tea. We always love a little bit of gum leaf in our billy tea. We have 100 acres and go up the back into the granite there, and often wonder where the thunderbolt wandered through there and in his times, and often think, did he hide his treasure there? We'll have a dig around, or we usually find his pigs and deer. But we're up there and boiling our billy, and the grandkids love to come up there too and have a sausage sizzle and a billy of tea. So I wrote this little poem called The Old Black Billy. In amongst some granite rocks in country where bush rangers roam, upon a fire of stringy bark, an old black billy has made its home. Suspended from an old wrought frame, its contents boil inside the tin, and when it's ready to my delight, some bush brewed tea will put within. And when it draws and nicely steeps, my cup will be quite full. We drink it down, this billy tea, our thirst it is fulfilled. Nothing better than that smoky taste through it. We on the Moonbi Ranges, it's sort of famous for the timber jinkers and the bullickies that were going down it. And Moonbi itself was built basically as the station where they started, and to traverse over the terrible range. And I wrote this poem called The Old Timber Jinker. The bullocks have gone from the old timber jinker that was a time before. The jostling journeys of scurrying fumes and noise we cannot ignore. The yokes are still and the wood wheels don't turn, and the beasts are turned out to rest. The cussing bullockies laid down their whips. To their vigilance we can attest. On the old Moonbi range they would burden the danger of bringing a load down the hill. Woo back, and the polers would dig in their hooves, and the offsiders would jump and deliver their load to the mill. So, yeah, just a little short spurt, that one sort of. A bit of a funny one, like the old bush icons of television that you used to sit down and watch as a kid. And I called this the old bush icons. Well, I've seen old Harry Butler and old Les Hiddens too. Even Mike and Mel on their trek to the Baku. But there's one thing they've in common, and it's always got them there. Their dear old series Landy kept you in your lounge room chair. Then there's Albie Mangles. He had a series too. And also Malcolm Douglas. I'm sure he had a few. All these blokes are Aussie icons that roam the bush a lot. And even though it's British, the series made the plot. So take off your akubra to these men who trek the bush. Yes, they probably wouldn't have made it, but the series gave the push. So pretty much series Land Rovers and how it built Australia, sort of thing. I'll
Oh, yeah, okay. That's you're talking about. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so the icon of the bushies, Les Hiddens and Harry Butler, and that. But one thing they had in common, they always drove an old Landy, but we didn't have all the other fancy bits and pieces to run around now. That it's got every bell and whistle and can pull 5-ton horse floats or something like that. But I think, this last one is sort of about poets themselves. I sat down and thought, we have a lot of Smiths, and the wordsmiths are the ones that sort of charm us with their poetry. So I called it the wordsmith. That was simple. Well, the wordsmith hung his shingle in that little country town, and the folks, they came to listen. Yes, they came from all around, for the stories that he'd sculpted in the minds of those who stood were as solid as the carpenter could fabricate from wood. For there's goldsmiths who meld jewellery from precious lots of gold, and we can't forget the blacksmith forging metal hot and bold. The gunsmith tinkers weapons, and the arrowsmith as well. But the wordsmith uses words and rhyme and stories they will tell. They can conjure up some poetry or short verse to entertain. Oh, the pictures that they put in ink In our minds they will remain. Lawson, Patterson and Dennis, they never fail to please, and Dorothy McKellar will put your mind at ease. For the wordsmith is a craftsman of syllable and verb, of adjectives and synonyms, of nouns that you have heard. So like every other tradesmith, their wares they are so proud, they will step up on the podium and entertain the crowd. Yeah. Thank you.